Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Esports Money, ZSM, Mac10, whatever you want to call me, and today we're going to be going over the Sven gameplay of the first Australian to ever win a Valve event, and this is, of course, OG.ana, who most recently played for OG, that is currently teamless. So let's go ahead and get into this. Hey guys, if you like my content, hit those like and subscribe buttons, it really helps me out. Thanks. So, first thing we're going to do is start the match. So, sorry that flicker will occur at the very start, just because of how OBS likes to interact with this full-screen windowed Vulkan application. So, per usual, most of what we'll be focusing on here or most of the gameplay we'll be looking at will be through the lens of the player perspective on Sven. So Sven's going to start out here with a lot of regen. He's built very defensively. He's currently on a 5-stack against another stack team. However, it's a 3-stack and a 2-stack. However, I would also assume that the cumulative MMR of the other team is slightly higher, or at least noticeably higher, than his team, just because of the way the Valve matchmaking algorithm works. Now he's doing a lot of spinning around. He will be looking up at the top to see what's going on with the Nature's Prophet, but there's of course nothing he can do anyway. So, in his lane against him, he's not sure what's going on, but he can probably bet that it's going to not involve the anti-mage, probably not going to involve the Trent, though it is possible. And yeah, so he knows the Ursa's mid, so he knows he won't be laning against the Ursa, so he's a little bit more confident already. However, he's probably suspecting, and correctly so, that the Sand King will be there, because Sand King's been very, very popular in the offlane due to his passive. So a couple of things I want to point out here. So, level 1, he does get the stun, which is pretty standard, and you will see that the stun is scaling. So this is a very recent replay. This replay was played in the last 24 hours, and it is played on patch 7.06F. So he does go ahead and get the value point level 1 stun. I'm going to slow this down to ×1 during this little level 1 gank. And there's just so much control here. There's nothing really that the Sand King can do. The Pit Lord doesn't want to spend his entire game down here in this bottom lane. And because of that level 1 gank, the Sand King will be a good bit behind, and now the Pit Lord won't have to spend a lot of time in this bottom lane making sure that all is hunky-dory with the Sven. So he's going to keep on farming up some creeps. He will go ahead and get the Stout Shield and the Quelling Blade. These are just generally good items, and I strongly endorse them on Sven, on a lot of heroes, but the pair is especially good on Sven because he likes the extra damage on creeps, he likes the extra last-hitting power, and he likes the tankiness in lane. However, do take note that the passive ability on the Sand King is magic damage based, so neither the Stout Shield nor the Warcry will help him against that passive. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the build and slow this down. So Sven OG.ana has put 2 points into Great Cleave, and he will choose to max this first. Now, there are two ways to look at this build, and both of which are correct. So the first is the obvious. This is the greediest build imaginable. He doesn't even have boots. He doesn't have boots queued up. He will actually buy them before he gets Mask of Madness, but he's going straight for Mask of Madness without even queuing up boots, and he will only have brown boots when he gets Mask of Madness. That's not exactly a fighting decision, that's an attack rate decision and a sustain with a lifesteal that will allow him to farm neutrals very quickly and push his lane very quickly. It is a very greedy build. Now notice, they're bullying the Sand King around here a good bit. They pull him back. They will not kill him again because he does run away. And notice immediately that the Sven doesn't chase. He just goes, okay, whatever. He doesn't even there's no debate there. He just immediately goes, it's not even worth my time, because no one it's a blink dagger. That's basically all you're ever worried about on the Sand King. That's his highest power spike. Versus the Sven is a traditional carry, so he is way more preoccupied with his own farm than anyone else's farm in the game, including the anti-mage. However, this is a pub, a very, very high-level pub, and what this means is that when you have these superstar professional players playing core roles in pubs, they're primarily going to be concerned with playing their game rather than shutting down someone else's. So the number one thing in his game is keeping him farmed, not worrying about keeping the anti-mage not farmed. The anti-mage is also having a relatively rough time because he is laning against the Nature's Prophet, who can bully him around a little bit. I mean, look at how low he is, and the only person up here is the Nature's. So back down to this bottom lane. So I talked about how this build does two things. One is that it's the greediest build possible. Two, and this is something a lot of people don't think about, Sand King is an incredible offlaner because of the fact that his Caustic is... I mean, it's Caustic. It's really, really, really annoying to play against. It's a very strong ability. And the Sven has 2 points in Great Cleave, plus he has the Quelling Blade. So when he attacks this creep, he does a lot of damage. It's also based on armor type, not amount of armor. So he's doing a pretty... So, like, watch this. He's doing a pretty good amount of damage with his Great Cleave. And what this does is... Normally, the Sand King is able to really bully around melee heroes, because when you come in to get CS, you're at risk of taking damage from the Caustic. But because the Sven has 2 points in Great Cleave and the Quelling Blade, he's actually dishing it out more so. He's doing it to an extent that the Sand King can't tolerate. The Sand King actually has a Poor Man Shield. So, yeah. Like, Sand King's not having a good time. He doesn't have Poor Man. Yeah, he has Poor Man Shield. Whenever you buy a Poor Man Shield on a hero that's not agility, you're not having a good time. For the most part. There are a few exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, it's a I really, really, really don't want to die item. See, look, he's coming in to try to get some Caustic, and he's getting hit by the Cleave. Like, the Sven is bullying him around and getting CS at the same time. So if you're a Sven... against a melee offlaner, you can use this Cleave. It's very, very good against a lot of heroes that are good at shutting down Sven when they're in the safe lane offlane matchup. Timbersaw is just going to take damage from the Cleave. The Axe, you can... I'm not sure how Cleave interacts with Axe. I'm pretty sure it doesn't trigger counter Helix, but even if it does, Cleave travel distance is enough that he should, even if you were to trigger that counter helix, it's not going to come back and hurt you. This makes Sven a great safe laner while also building for the mid game and the late game. Building for the mid game, which really is building for the late game, because he's putting so many points into Great Cleave that he'll be a farming monstrosity. This has actually been my preferred way to play Sven for several years now. Even though Stormhammer now scales up in terms of its stun, in addition to scaling its damage, so up until about, I want to say like 4 days ago, 2-3 days ago, something like that, the stun duration started... It was Sunday when the patch came out, so today's Tuesday, it was Sunday. The stun duration is 1.7 seconds on Stormhammer level 1. It used to be 2 at all levels. That 0.3 seconds does not justify putting points there that would otherwise be going into Great Cleave. Also, we'll talk about the Mask of Madness mechanics when we get there. Another quick thing, I swear I'm not trying to sell you guys Immortals, but I really think that this sword, Immortal, is almost pay to win in a sense. The only reason it's not is because your opponent also gets the same advantage, because you can so clearly see the pattern of your Cleave and the monster, and the creeps, the units it's affecting. So it's really nice. I really like CS LOL. I really like this Immortal. I think it makes the hero a little bit easier to play, though it's a dual-edged sword. It's not pay to win because your enemy can also see the pattern of the Cleave, at least when you talk about the laning sense. So, and when it comes to neutrals, if you have to take a couple extra right clicks, it's not really a significant difference. See, just based on that pattern, so it's a nice dual-edged sword. The Sven can see the pattern, but the Sand King also knows he has to back up, and whenever the Sand King comes in to do his usual shenanigans, that would cause a Sven or a melee strength core to have to back up, or melee any core to have to back up, he's taking damage from the Cleave. It's an awesome build right here. We can see the Sven did pick up the brown boots and will be finishing up his Mask of Madness pretty quickly, actually. We are talking about formerly OG.ana, still Ana, just not OG. So, Woof Woof Dog, the Sand King, comes in for the stun, and see, the Sven even walks around, takes extra damage from the Sandstorm, just to get that extra Cleave damage on. Meanwhile, Sven is basically, or Ana's basically just checking all of the lanes whenever someone dies, though there's not a lot he can do here. I had planned on going through this at 1.5 times speed, as I'm typically, as a general rule, that's what I'm trying to do with this show, but I want to slow this down a bit. because I think that the first 10 minutes of the game give a lot of insight into how Ana is playing this hero. And I think that is what is currently the, I'm using Ana as an example. I think most professional players are playing this hero in a similar light, but specifically against the Sand King, I think this was really cool. When you think about a Sven, you don't really think about him as someone that's going to bully a caustic Sand King out of a lane. I mean, the Sand King goes ahead and puts 2 points in Burrow Strike and grabs a point in Sandstorm because of the fact that the caustic's not paying dividends. The Sandstorm's paying more dividends than the caustic because of the fact that the Sven can't always hit him. Okay, so notice we're actually gonna jump back 10 seconds. Turn this up. Notice how Ana is actually going to look towards mid lane as this fight is breaking out, trying to figure out if he should TP, and he's not going to, because one thing that a lot of players don't realize is that, as a general rule, if you are a good mechanical player and you're farming with a carry that has a good farm mechanic like a Mask of Madness or Cleave, or in Sven's case both, you're going to get more money by farming your lane than you are by winning a team fight. And again, we're talking about a player that's trying to play his game, not prevent someone else from playing theirs. Ana is more concerned with him getting farm than shutting down the enemy's farm, even against an anti-mage. The anti-mage is currently, again, he's checking to see if he can TP to help. There's nothing he can do. The anti-mage right now has a Perseverance, Boots of Speed, Stout Shield, Quelling Blade. The anti-mage up until just a moment ago was actually beating Sven in net worth, but he's way less scary. In fact, they're only 3 gold apart in net worth right now, but he's way less scary. Just because the Sven has stun, he has his ultimate, he has Mask of Madness, the Sven is actually better at being anti-mage than anti-mage is right now. Think about that one for a second. Another thing, small detail, you don't see it as much in this game, but just a general Sven thing. Warcry now has a 20-second cooldown at level 4, and Mask of Madness has a 22-second cooldown. So you'll see them, they're usually used together if you have the mana to support it. So they see the Sven moving around, the nature's coming in, they're committing a lot for this kill, and the Ursa is the highest net worth in the game, and even if Sven doesn't know that he's the highest net worth, he knows he's got pretty decent net worth because he has the Poor Man's Shield, because he has the Phase Boots, because he has the Raindrop, the bottle. He looks like he has a lot of money, or at least relative to this portion of the game. So Ursa's going to do a little do-si-do. Sven's going to continue to farm up, grab another piece of his... Now notice he got his Belt of Strength and then changed his mind immediately and bought a TP because he's thinking about this fight over by this shrine. And he's actually going to TP Internet. Because this is the highest net worth. This is the highest net worth kill he could possibly get right now, and it's a surefire kill. He's pretty much guaranteed to get it because of how low the Ursa is. And even with the ulti coming out from the Sand King, he's going to live. He's living right now. He has 211 health, 27 mana. He doesn't even check the Sand King's mana. The Sand King actually has a level 3 Burrow Strike, 220 magic damage. It's not enough to kill him with magic resistance because he has, what is it? How much magic resistance does he currently have? 25%. So the Sand King is does not have enough magic damage to kill him. But he could be a little bit suspicious. He probably doesn't know whether or not there are 3 or 4 points in the Burrow Strike. But regardless, he says, doesn't matter. Most likely he either doesn't have enough mana or it's on cooldown and doesn't even bother to check him. The Sand King also doesn't even have, he's nowhere near Blink. In fact, he chooses to chase for a moment, and then backs off and goes back to farming. This is another kind of small, but actually it's a huge detail. One of the things that really separates good players from, I would say, players that are slightly above average to players that are below the mean is, in terms of at least carry players, core players, we see these types of players spend as little time as possible walking back to Fountain. It's like the walk of shame, and you really don't see it at this super high level of play. To the point where he just used the Courier and the speed boost on the Courier to deliver items to himself inside the base while he's shrine healed inside the base, because he knows those shrines will probably not be almost certainly in 5 minutes, even if the enemy won a team fight and rushed 3 towers in a row, in 5 minutes they will have in 5 minutes the enemy will not be knocking on their door. And if they are, they will. I mean, it's been 5 minutes. I'll just shrine back. He knows that cooldown is irrelevant. Is the point I'm trying to make. So he's going to walk over here. Magnus has been stacking for him, and again, this is something you can't really rely on because it's a stacked team. He's got friends here, and he does just barely get the stack. I believe this is a quad stack. It's either a triple or a quad. I think it's a quad. And he's going to easily clean this up with his ultimate combined with his Mask of Madness. The funny thing is, they're saying nice when they're talking about the stack happening. I think one of the reasons they said nice was because there were no Prowlers there. Because the Prowler is something that can mess Sven up because the root prevents him from attacking, so he can't lifesteal while doing a ridiculous amount of damage. If they were a little bit shorter on lockdown there, they don't get that kill, but because they have all 3 heroes there, they do get the kill. They also did commit the RP, which is, how much is that? Yeah, 2.25 stun at level 1. So, pretty darn decent. Another thing I kind of want to draw attention to is that Sven is buying and popping clarities all over the place. And the reason being is because he opted to go for strength over mana, and so that does get amplified with your bonus damage from God Strength. That is a little bit of additional hit points. That is 6 damage. But it is a curious decision to me, because 225 mana is a very, very large amount of mana for Sven. That's, at level 2, that's a cast of your ulti, and a cast of Warcry, and a cast of Mask of Madness, with 25 mana to spare. And at level 18, or level 3 ultimate, that is a cast of the ult and Mask of Madness, meaning you have to spend 25 additional mana than normal, than your baseline, to use all 3 of your abilities. However, make sure you use all of them before you use Mask, because again, it does silence you. So, another thing I want to point out, I was talking a little bit earlier about how the cooldown for Warcry is basically the same as the cooldown for Mask of Madness's Berserk ability. If you use this first, and then you use the Mask of Madness, it has -6 armor on it. It used to be -5, now it's -6 because of the patch. At level 1, you get 5 armor from Warcry, and that essentially nullifies the difference here. I think the reason it actually reduced your armor by 6 is a nerf aimed kind of at Sven. I think Sven got more nerfed than a lot of heroes. He got a lot of small nerfs because items that he liked were nerfed. But he goes for the strength because he wants to get the Echo Saber. So he's focusing on having more mana regen and responsible mana management, using his treads, toggling his treads to int when he uses his abilities and when he uses his mana consuming items, Mask of Madness specifically. And he counts on using the regen from the Echo Saber combined with the magic wand charges to sustain his mana in the early and mid game. Now remember, plus 225 mana actually has nothing to do with int, so it actually doesn't increase your regeneration, which is why he, and I think a lot of other pros, generally go for the strength, because it's more of a burst thing. It's not going to help you farm faster overall because it doesn't affect your regen as well. Especially when it comes to farming big ancient stacks in the early and mid game, because you kind of need your ultimate, which burns through a lot of mana. Please ignore that. That is an email sound. Meant to mute that before. So he will go ahead and get dunked on here. What can you do? He's the highest net worth. They want to gank him. And this is not that interesting because we're just watching what Ana is watching while dead. So I'm going to switch over to the Anti-Mage for a few seconds because I want to keep drawing parallels over here. So the Anti-Mage is, again, he's still dead even in farm with this Sven, but he's not scary at all. We're 12 minutes in, and this Sven looks terrifying. He's almost level 12. When he's level 12, he'll have level 2 God Strength and Mask of Madness. He's got treads. He's got a magic wand. He's got everything he really wants right now. He's doing very well. I'm so sorry about that noise. Please disregard it. I don't know why I'm getting a flurry of emails at the moment. So, while this is going on, the Anti-Mage is building towards Battle Fury, and he's kind of close. I mean, I think the Courier has... yeah, Courier's got 1 piece of Battle Fury on it. So he's pretty close to Battle Fury. And instead of getting the Cleave bonus from the Mag, he actually does have an Ogre, so he has the Bloodlust. I think Ogre's probably going... Oh, he's not. He's going Max Ignite build instead of Max Bloodlust. So, interesting choice from him. But regardless, right now the Sven is out anti-maging the anti-mage. And he will for most of the game. There's an interesting power spike where if an anti-mage has his Battle Fury and then gets his Manta Style, he suddenly becomes way stronger than he was without that item. That one item makes him really scary, and until he gets that, he's kind of everybody's bitch. And he just blinks out. He sees him TPing all the way back here, knows he probably doesn't have enough money to afford to blink. He's not doing that much better than him. And still is just like, nope, I'm out. The anti-mage also just wants to play his game. Much like the Sven, he's mostly concerned with himself and getting his farm, and I don't think that's a bad way to look at the game if you are playing a carry, and the carry that you have scales with about the same equivalence as the carry on the other team. If you're playing, let's say, a carry Pugna, and you're playing against an anti-mage, actually that's not the best of an example, easy kill, not much to see here, but so let's say you're playing a hero that, let's say, doesn't carry that well. You're playing carry, I don't know, Ursa against an anti-mage. That Ursa, you have to be more concerned with shutting down the enemy than getting your farm in those situations because the enemy will just win if the game goes on long enough. When you're on equal footing, so Sven versus anti-mage, equal-ish footing, you don't have to worry about it as much. I still think that the anti-mage carries harder in the late game, but because of the Sven's cleave, he kind of has a natural answer to the illusions, and also because there's an AoE on his stun, so he can stun all 3 of the illusion or all 3 AMs, and then kill them quickly. Anti-mage just now picking up Battle Fury at 13 minutes and 45 seconds. Now that is actually a pretty damn good Battle Fury time. Like, it's not perfect, but he does already have, you know, a couple pieces of his treads. And he went naked, but I mean, if you're like 4K, you're pretty happy with that timing. I think even in 5K, you're probably okay with that timing. That's not bad. But Ana is making it look really, really bad just by playing the hero well, just by having good mechanics and farming well. That's really all he's been doing. He's being very careful about when he takes fights. He looks down at the bottom lane and goes, "Can I make a difference there?" In a way that, what's the benefit of me coming down there versus the cost? And looking down at that, it looks like he probably shouldn't go, but he's going to go anyway because the Nature's Prophet comes in. If the Nature's Prophet doesn't come in there, then he probably shouldn't come. But Nature's Prophet and Mag both come in. You can see the Mag TPing. I didn't see the Nature's the first time I watched this replay. And they're just... like, he's not even worried about the farm. He just throws a hammer in case he's going to TP out. Like, I mean, he's only worried about the farm. He wasn't even worried about killing the hero. He's just... let's get some CS. Also, giving the hero kill to his allies is beneficial to a certain extent, because Mag has a farming mechanic, Matrix has a farm mechanic, but Underlord and Disruptor do not. And you kind of want some farm on these heroes. Disruptor becomes really, really scary with an Ags in the late game. But generally speaking, he's more concerned with killing creeps than heroes, and I think that's a good outlook to have on this hero, especially in this game, where he can carry on equal footing with the enemy. Now he has, before this fight starts, he has the Echo Saber. Plus 75% mana regen and plus 10 int. That is a pretty significant jump. Let's actually go back. So he's 3.2 right now. Oh, he's so 3.2 with the Oblivion Staff. We were just at... trying to figure out exactly where we are before I jump around. Alright, so we're currently at 1545. Let's go back to... here. I'm trying to figure out when exactly he got that Oblivion Staff. So yeah, we're at like 1.3. Yeah, he's at level 12, he's at 1.4, and then when we go to right here, he's essentially doubled his mana regen with this item, which is also an item that you kind of want to build in a lot of situations. I think this item has actually become less popular due to the popularity of Mask of Madness, because they both give you similar things. They both give you a flash farming mechanic based on attack speed, and I think you should still be getting both because of the catch potential here. Another thing is that the Sven OG.ana might not feel comfortable taking this game into the super late, because you have the Trend Protector, the Bloodlusted Anti-Mage. He might not be super excited about taking this into the late game, but he knows that he can dominate in the mid game because the Anti-Mage's farm is shit right now. And so he goes for the Echo Saber, which is, make no mistake about it, a very, very, very mid-game item. It's not something you want to have at your inventory at the 60-minute mark. So this gank will occur right here, and it goes better than you would expect for a lot of Sven players. In fact, he probably would have killed the Ursa here if the Ursa didn't have his ultimate. But the Ursa does have his ultimate, and his ultimate is a flat reduction of 80% on all sources of damage. So there's no using a creep to cleave, there's no dicking around here, you just deal a huge amount of damage. And that's kind of I would say that's a disastrous fight. It's not that, it looks like a worse deal than it is. I mean, it's 1600 gold swing at 16 minutes. It's a significant swing, but it's not a game-ending swing by any means. Anti-Mage is still not anywhere near fighting shape. He's level 11 with Treads and Battle Fury. He's about to pick up the first piece of his Yasha. I mean, these are not bad timings for the Anti-Mage. He's just getting out-farmed and out-fought by the Sven. The Sven's not balling out of control with kills either. He's 4-2-2. He's just farming really well and being very deliberate about when he picks fights. If the fight is not guaranteed to benefit him personally as a hero, then he won't go to it, unless it's something that could be apocalyptically bad for his team. Or winning it could result in multiple towers, or at least a tower.
Something bad is happening.
So, speed up here, he's going to tear into this tower. I think this is actually an oversight on his part, leaving his Treads on agility. Maybe he wants the attack speed, but I believe that's an oversight. One thing that you will notice, though, is he spends a lot of time with his Treads on intelligence, because he does gain a significant amount of mana and mana regen. So, the benefit of leaving your Treads on int for long periods of time is increasing your overall mana pool, so his regen goes from 3.3 to 4.7 regen, not bad. And on top of that, you can save a huge amount of mana, almost enough to cover the cost of like Warcry and Mask of Madness, which are extremely cheap abilities, if you cast them with int Treads on and then toggle over to strength. It seems like he does prefer to keep it on agility at some points. I think that might be an oversight, though. I think that is, because I think the damage and health outweigh the attack speed on a strength hero. And now he's going for Blink Dagger. And now Sven has a Blink Dagger. Sven is now better at being Anti-Mage than Anti-Mage. Like, way better. Like, the Ursa has Vlad's. I mean, the Ursa's a little bit scary. The Ursa's, like, close in farm to Sven, but he feels so underwhelming compared to the Sven. All they need is 4 seconds of control to wear through the ultimate, and that Ursa is dead every time. And Ursa doesn't even have a Quelling Blade. And if he gets a Quelling Blade, then he's got to give up some other significant item, significant for this part of the game, to get through the Nature's Prophet, who's building an Orchid. So Sven's going to continue to farm up. Okay, so real quick, look at this map. These creeps just hit. these creeps just hit, but they also have no vision over here. That's the big thing. They have no vision here, and it looks safer over here. Wait, what? Where's the Trent? Is he here? Oh, he's here, but he's in Viz right here, I think. This is all the way over here, and you'd have to TP here to get it. So Sven goes for the Ancients, because this is sketchier. This is at least as sketchy as the Ancients, and the Ancients are more profitable than a single creep wave. And this way the Disruptor gets some farm here, and Nature can take this little area over here. Also, teleporting across the map for farm doesn't make a huge amount of sense when you're Sven that can kind of grab farm anywhere, because you have Blink Mask of Madness. Sven can actually, if he really wanted to take this game late, which he doesn't need to, but if he wanted to take the game late and just lay back and farm, he can absolutely keep up with the Anti-Mage. He has a wonderful cleave, and he has Magnus to give him more cleave, and he has a Blink Dagger and Mask of Madness. He's going to he can tear through the entire jungle every minute. This game does not go on for too much longer. Oh, whoops. Player perspective. Let's rewind this just a second. Or 10. So Ana's rolling over here. The Magnus does clear that stack. Nature's Prophet's looking up here. It's kind of relevant. Here's an interesting one. So they see the Sand King jump in and Burrow Strike. So they know he doesn't have Burrow Strike. He's got new talisman. 2 null talismans. He really wants to live. And without even needing to commit the RP per se, which he has in 6 seconds, the Mag jumps in and skewers him, interrupting the cast. And then he's dead. Because he doesn't have enough time to avoid damage to blink out. Let's watch this again. Real quick this time. So the entire time... I'm just good. Sorry, let me focus on the Sand King. So during this little bit, that's a graphical artifact. So he jumps in, and from the time that he Burrow Strikes until his death, his blink is on cooldown because of the cleave from the Sven. And Underlord is here. Back to looking at Sven. So now the Sven's just popped his ultimate. He's got 25 seconds. He's got all of his cooldowns ready. He can pop Mask of Madness and just start wailing on this tower. And there's really not an answer for this. Like, there's not much of an answer anyway, even with all 5 heroes, but with the Sand King down, even though the Sand King only has level 1 ultimate, or he does have level 2 ultimate, but the Sand King is a big area of control. If the Sand King gets a good stun off, then the Ursa can do something to him, or if the Anti-Mage is there, he can do something to him. But with the Sand King dead, they lose a huge amount of control. They commit outside the base to try to get the jump on them, and they fail, and now it's pretty much game over. They're going to lose a Rax here, and losing a Rax at 20 minutes is very, very hard to come back from. Look at the confidence in this Sven. Let's, free camera, play, stop. Okay, so, look at the confidence in this Sven. Where did the Anti-Mage go? So, back up 10 seconds, and let's watch. So the Sven's TPing. Sven TPs here, pops the Shrine, and only heals ever so slightly. He's got 536 health. Now, he does have full mana, so the ultimate from the Anti-Mage at this point is only going to cancel a TP. The Anti-Mage has enough money for an ultimate orb, and he has the Yasha, and he has a Battle Fury. He's only a little bit behind, so he's there's 20% more farm on the Sven than the Anti-Mage, which, actually no, that's less than that. It's significantly less than that. It's like 17%, which I guess is 100%. But the Anti-Mage at level 15, one level below the Sven, with only a little bit less farm than him, at full health, compared to a quarter of his health with his ultimate on cooldown, his Warcry on cooldown. Mask of Madness is about to be off cooldown, but he doesn't have Warcry, so he doesn't have all the extra armor, and he doesn't have his ultimate. He just has a stun. And that's enough to make the anti-mage... It's like, his very presence bullies the anti-mage away from the lane. Like, he TPs here and blinks out, and that scares the anti-mage enough that he just straight up dips. Even though he's at 25% health, and these heroes are on relatively equal farm and level footing.
Yo, green dudes, something bad is happening. In your bottom.
Because he's farmed really well all game. And he's picked his fights really well all game. And he feels really comfortable just blinking up. Like, generally speaking, there's a lot of things that you might take away from this video, and I hope that blinking blindly up a lane into the fog of war to hit a creep wave is not one of them. Because most of the time there can be anything waiting for you there. But during that blink, that blind blink he just made, this guy's dead, these guys are still dead. That means the only people that could have potentially been there would have been the Sand King and the Anti-Mage, and it's very, very unlikely that they would have been able to kill him. Plus, they just saw one hero here. So he knows that he's completely safe at the moment. And he goes back to farming creeps, farming neutrals, because he can see the creep wave up here, and knows that he's got some time before there's going to be anything there. Does pick up the Sanj and Yasha. Again, notice the theme. That's another big contributing factor that leads to his overwhelming confidence against the Anti-Mage, and the Anti-Mage is like trembling fear of him. Anti-Mage is actually catching up, proportionally speaking, to his farm. They're very, 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 very close in farm. Anti-Mage is level 16, he's level 17, and you don't really get anything at level 17 other than some stats. So, he's level 16 now, and should be feeling, like, generally speaking, if I'm like, well, you have a carry, one carry's a little bit harder than the other, but they're pretty similar, and they're identical in farm and level, or close to identical in farm and level. Well, the Anti-Mage is really behind right now because of the in terms of a fight, because the Anti-Mage is building, and I think, of course, correctly, he's building the Manta style, and then he's going to look for something like a Basher or a BKB. He's preparing for the late game. He's preparing for a game where he's 6-slotted, and the Sven has to debate selling items. And the Sven is saying, Ana is saying, fuck that noise, I'm going to end this game so early that we're not going to get to the point where you're scary. And again, this Anti-Mage has been farming pretty okay. The Anti-Mage has 2 deaths and 2 kills. Sven has 5 deaths, or 5 kills, 2 deaths, 7 assists. So Sven is doing a bit better than him. But the Anti-Mage has been farming quite well considering the circumstances. And the Anti-Mage is like planning, the Anti-Mage is planning for the late game, and because of his itemization, the Sven can kill him now, because the Sven is not planning for the late game. We don't see the Sven saving up and buying items like AC. We don't see the Sven saving up and buying items like Assault Cuirass, or sorry, I just said AC twice, like Heart or Crit. Daedalus would be a huge item. If I were this Sven, I would be thinking my next item is a Daedalus. However, or Daedalus or the Bloodthorn, pretty sure it's called Bloodthorn, the crit, the thing Orchid, yeah, Bloodthorn, or Bloodthorn. However, the Orchid is kind of underwhelming on the Sven, at least in the early game. The only thing that it really gives you is the mana regen, and it gives you the silence and the mana regen, which is good for one-on-one fights, but it's not that big of a deal in a team fight because you already have the Orchid on the Nature's Prophet. It also gives you a lot of mana regen, but he's at full mana. He has no mana issues because he's tread toggling well. He's using Warcry and Mask of Madness responsibly, and he's got mana regen from the Echo Saber. So he actually doesn't care about mana at all. So he doesn't need to build into the Bloodthorn, or he doesn't need the Orchid immediately. Next, you might be thinking, well, Crystallis is pretty good. Crystallis is, I mean, it is a good item for what it is, but Crystallis is a 20% chance to deal less than double damage, versus Daedalus is a 30% chance to deal Wait, what? Whoa, that does not seem right. Okay. I think that's... Okay, regardless, it's a much larger... If that's actually correct, then data list is actually a trash item and I'll never buy it again. Wow. Holy shit. There's no way that's real, though. Right? A 30... That... I think that's supposed to be 235? Right? Right, guys? Okay. So, regardless, assuming that this is a bug, then this is a pretty huge jump because you're getting plus 80 damage compared to plus 30, and you're getting a plus 5% chance to yield a crit, and the crit deals more damage. If this is the actual values, then you shouldn't build it anyway. Regardless, Chrysalis doesn't give you that much. It's a decent value slot item, but your build then is to either finish the Daedalus or to build the Bloodthorn. And if you build the Bloodthorn, you're going to be waiting a long time before you have enough money to put it all together. So he's not building for the late game at all. He's saying at 30 minutes, I want to be fighting I want to be fighting full swing now. I want to end the game as soon as possible.
A gift from the tempest of battle.
And he does. Sorry, I went on that rant because I really wanted to drive home the itemization decisions and how, despite the equivalence in farm between these two heroes, the itemization makes Sven way scarier right now. And this game is about to end anyway. At least my analyses will end soon because of the fact that once this little skirmish happens, the game is basically over. It goes on for a while longer, but... So, notice how a lot of players, especially a Sven with a BKB, would have stuck around here. They would have stuck around. They would have been like, let's fight, whatever. Again, notice the Disruptor's on his team, so it is a friendly Disruptor ult. And while this is going on, you get the Pit Lord in. You have a nice cluster of heroes here. And other than the Sand King ultimate, you don't really have a way to exploit that on the Dire side. But you have the Ursa, which is good at fighting in tight quarters, and you have the stun from... Yeah, see, so the Ursa blinks in, and I think for a moment you could actually see the Sand King here. Yeah. So Sven sees the Sand King, or at least he knows it's got to be coming, because the Ursa just went in, and this team is most likely not going to just let the Ursa jump in alone. They're probably at least a little bit organized because Ana is playing on a 5-stack. So that Sand King stun comes in, and the Ignite comes in from the Ogre Magi. And when that Sand King... The Ignite's kind of a nice deal to see going off, but the big one there is he sees the Sand King use his Burrow Strike, and then he uses it into a Static Storm. Sorry about the emo noise. And once he does that, there's no control other than an Ogre Magi walking up, and he knows the Ogre doesn't have Blink. So he actually does have to walk up to get a 1.5 second stun duration off, and meanwhile the gang is all here for Team Radiant. So that's when he blinks in. But at first he does walk out. He knows that there's probably going to be that Sand King stun coming, and that combined with a good AM play is probably the only thing that can kill him, and he could see AM a moment ago, but I don't think he actually knows where AM is at the moment. So, going to turn this up to half speed, and from here, it's basically history. There is a stun on the Sven, but it doesn't matter. There's enough control from the RP, from the Magnus, that the combined cleave damage is just too much. The Ursa will fight as best he can, but his ultimate only lasts 4 seconds, and then after that, you see he just takes so much damage. And from here, it's basically game. I mean, that's like a near-perfect ulti from the Sand King, but it's only level 2. And, I mean, he doesn't have an Ags, and Ags doesn't even affect his ultimate anymore. But it's only level 2, and we're talking about a very, very, very farmed cluster of heroes. But it is a very, very good ulti, but again, too little, too late. And now the Sand King will die, this Rax will fall, and thank you for watching episode 2 of the Esports Money's Daily. I hope that this has been informative. Please let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. I know I was very long-winded and wordy at times. Mumbling is something that I should probably work on a bit, but most of these points I wanted to make in one way or another. The itemization especially, I want to emphasize how a lot of times when you think, a lot of times people think about the game and they think about, well, if I get, if I'm going to itemize for the late game, like getting a Battle Fury on Anti-Mage, it's also going to help me in the mid game, because, you know, Battle Fury's got decent stats, and I will have the cleave during fights if I have to fight early, but it's really, you can really see the effects of itemizing for the mid game compared to itemizing for the late game here. In a lot of situations, if you itemize for the late game when you're winning anyway, you don't notice the effects that you would have had in the mid game, or the strength you would have had in the mid game if you had itemized for the mid game instead of the late game. But here you can very clearly see a Sven that's playing like he's got 5 minutes left, and an anti-mage that is playing like he's got an hour to play the game. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.